Sadiq Khan't said there needs to be a concerted government investment in prevention but also enforcement. But when asked why he needs another meeting with the Prime Minister to take action, this is what the Mayor said.
Well, let me explain the context. In the last 8 years, the Met Police has lost £700 million in funding. Over the next 3 years, we've been told we'll be losing a further £300 million. That's £1 billion worth of funding. Roughly speaking, 30% of community officers lost. Roughly speaking, 65% of police staff. Our police numbers are 30,000 versus New York's, who are 36,000.
But on frontline officers, actually, compared July 2013 to July 2017, frontline officer numbers are down 1.5%. Recorded knife crime is up 38%.
No, if you look at police resources...
But I'm talking about police numbers, frontline officers on the streets.
Hold on a sec. Those police officers haven't got community support officers that they used to have. We've lost...
I find it hard, our listeners will find it hard to believe on LBC that you increase the number of police support officers, community support officers, and suddenly knife crime is going to go down.
Well, what your LBC listeners will appreciate is the importance of neighbourhood policing. Neighbourhood policing is crucial for the police to have the intelligence to know which young people to stop and search, to have the intelligence to know where to undertake the knife sweeps, to have the intelligence to target the right gangs. Don't underestimate the importance of neighbourhood policing. Members of the public having confidence in the police to provide them with intelligence. But here's the point.
But I was out on just before you make your other point, I was out on the streets of Tooting today, your neck of the woods, and I was speaking to people, and I came out of the tube, and to a man and woman, it was very easy to say, we don't have enough officers, police officers, pounding our streets, and where is the Mayor?
Well, I'm here. I've been.
But you haven't been here during the course of this week. You haven't been here over the past week. 7 dead.
Well, I've been here. I've been nowhere.
But you haven't been very public.
Well, hold on a second. You asked me 7 questions in one. Let me ask each one at a time. Okay. Right. The first one is, in the last 8 years, we have lost 46% of funding for youth provision. 46% in the last 8 years. We've lost 40% from Met Police funding. Since 2014, we've seen crime go up across the country, not just at London. I only became mayor in May 2016, across the country, a national increase in violent crime as well. So what we're trying to do is realising there's been a massive cut in funding for prevention, for education, for enforcement, to do what we can. That's why just 2 months ago I announced a record investment in youth facilities but also in police. And so the £110 million I announced will lead to 1,000 officers roughly being protected.
But only 15 million is for knife crime.
Hold on a second. No, in the current year, 15 million has been ring-fenced for knife crime, which will be in perpetuity. That's led to the announcement today of a violent crime task force of 120 officers targeting this area. But I've got to be frank with Londoners, as you'd expect me to do so. By ourselves, with the best will in the world, we won't be able to solve this. We need to make sure there is proper investment in youth provision, but also in policing. We've got a situation now.
You can't blame a spike of 38% in recorded knife crime and a higher crime rate than New York simply on the fact that there aren't enough youth clubs.
Well, the responsibility for the crime lies with the criminals. But if you speak to, as I've done, the Mayor of New York, you speak to the Commissioner of the New York Police Service and the Deputy Commissioner, they will tell you one of the ways they've reduced the murder rate is by neighbourhood policing, by giving young people constructive things to do. And it's a spectrum. On the one hand, there's going to be tough enforcement to make sure people carrying knives and guns are stopped, searched, arrested, charged, prosecuted. And that's why the Violent Crime Task Force will build on Operation Sceptre and other projects to do that bet. The second part of that is stopping young people thinking it's cool, it's okay, gives them a sense of belonging to join a gang or to carry a knife or a gun. So it's across the piece. What you're seeing is the consequence of young people thinking it's okay to carry a knife, thinking it glamorize is cool. And we're going to make sure we do a whole host of things. You know, it's very easy to think there is a magic bullet. There isn't. We need social media companies to be responsible. We need there to be more facilities for young people. We need to make sure there is...
But none of this is your fault. Or everything you're talking about, none of it lands on your doorstep.
Well, the responsibility lies with the criminals. I'm quite clear about that.
But what responsibility do you have, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm responsible for making sure that the budgets that I have are spent properly, and that's why I'm invested in the police service.
So everybody else is to blame, but not you?
Well, I've been quite clear. I think the criminals are responsible for the rising crime.
But you just told me about why the central government's responsible, why Theresa May hasn't met you, why there isn't enough youth provision, and you haven't told me about what your responsibility is.
Well, I'm responsible for policing in London, but I've got to be honest with Londoners. When we have a situation where there's been massive cuts in policing budget, massive cuts in facilities budgets, I'm afraid we can't solve these problems by ourselves. I think we will make a dent in relation to the Violent Crime Task Force. I believe we will make a dent in relation to the investment I've put into youth services and policing, but that's a fraction of the amount we've lost over the last 8 years. My message to your listeners is, if the government proceeds with the further cuts of £300 million in policing, if the government proceeds with the further cuts to council budgets, I'm afraid with the best one in the world, we're not going to be able to solve this problem.
You didn't answer my question. Where have you been the last week? There have been 7 dead in the last 7 days, 12 dead since you last made a public call to end on the violence that we've seen in London through a press release. Where have you been? Where's your visibility in London?
I've been here in London.
But you haven't been out. Have you been to meet any of the bereaved families?
I've spoken to a number of people over the last few days.
Have you spoken to the bereaved families?
No, I haven't spoken to the bereaved families, but I've got a deputy mayor and a commissioner. And the Met
But
Police
you're the
Service.
mayor. The buck stops with you, so surely.
That's an easy point. The point is that we're a team. The Met Police and City Hall are a team, and I've got full confidence.
So you haven't met the bereaved families. You haven't made any public appearances on television or on a broadcast. You haven't done any walkabouts. You haven't been to the scene of any of the murders. I mean, Ian Duncan-Smith, and I know he's a Tory, and I know they're local elections and things are sensitive, but he's saying you're missing in action. Doesn't he have a point?
Look, I've been in a number of knife sweeps. I've met a number of families. I've been to funerals.
But you haven't met the
before.
victim
I've been to youth
before, but not now.
facilities.
The problem's now, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, look, I'm here talking to you, trying to explain some of the things we're doing. I accept there are elections in 4 or 5 weeks' time, and politicians will have an attack. That's part of politics. But actually, you know, we've got bereaved families. We've got 2 teenagers who've lost their lives just in the last week. So as a father of 2 teenagers, it's personal to many of us who understand these problems. And, you know, I've got full confidence in the Met Police Service, but I'm not going to apologise for making the point, which is the context of the cuts over the last few years. I'm not going to apologise doing that. One of the jobs of the mayor is to be the champion advocate for our city. That means standing up for our city when we're facing massive cuts.
But that's the point, isn't it? One of the points that, you know, main roles of the mayor is to be a leader, is to be seen, is to be out there front and centre when this city is in a really difficult spot and fronting up to the scourge of knife crime and gang violence. And many of our listeners in LBC will be wondering where you've been. I mean, we've been trying to find you for the past 3 days, and now we're on Thursday lunchtime. You could have been out on Wednesday lunchtime, you could have been out on Tuesday lunchtime. Indeed, you could have been out over the bank holiday weekend, but you haven't been.
Well, to be fair, the Deputy Mayor's done a brilliant job.
But you're the mayor.
And I'm
She's not. The buck doesn't stop with Sophie Linden, it stops with you, Mr. Mayor.
And I'm here.
Now, Thursday lunchtime.
Well, hold on a sec. I mean, I'm here to talk to you as you'd expect me to do. So what I'm not going to do is do 24 interviews 7 days a week. But I'm always happy to talk.
You could have been out on Wednesday lunchtime.
Oh, that's unfair.
Could have been out on Tuesday.
But the police and the Deputy Mayor have done a great
7
job.
dead in the last week. It's 12 dead. 12 people, 12 bereaved families. 12 people dead on the streets of London, and you have not made one public appearance.
Well, here I am, and I use a number of ways
Except you're too late.
Oh, come on, you've got to let me finish the answer. I mean, even come on. I mean, you will know that I use a number of different ways of getting my message across to Londoners, ways that are effective. Sometimes that's LBC, sometimes that's newspapers, sometimes that's social media, sometimes it's other forms of broadcast. I apologise to LBC if I don't get to the front of the queue with LBC.
But you haven't spoken to anybody. I'm not making. I mean, this isn't LBC versus the BBC or ITN or whoever. You haven't spoken to anybody.
Well, when you get
You've issued some tweets.
Well, when you get a chance, look at some of the output that I've been doing on social media. Look at the conversations I've had with the Deputy Mayor, with my team. I've been in contact with the Commissioner. I think the reality is this, that I'm here talking about some of the challenges our city faces, trying to find solutions, asking again to meet with the Prime Minister. Home Secretary, of course, is somebody that's has a pivotal role to play in this. I'm here, and I've said this is a national problem demanding national solutions. Where are the national politicians?
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, was called Holding a Politician to Account. An absolutely sterling interview there, I thought, from Theo Usherwood, asking all the questions that I think we would all want answered. Well, were they answered? Do you think that the